Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were stealing from you the entire time? I was standing in a mobile clinic in rural Guatemala, treating a farmer's infected wound, when my phone buzzed with a bank alert. A deposit of $2.3 million had just cleared into my account. My hands froze. I wasn't expecting any money. I'd been working as a volunteer doctor with Medical Relief International for 14 months, living on almost nothing. The alert showed the source: Evergreen Agricultural Holdings. Sale proceeds for Willow Creek Farm. My heart stopped. I hadn't sold anything. Willow Creek was the 380-acre farm my mother left to me and my brother when she passed away 3 years ago. 50% each. Neither of us could sell without the other's written consent. That was in her will. Clear. Legally binding. Mom died from cancer after fighting for 2 years. She left us the farm she had built from nothing over 35 years. 380 acres worth roughly $7.8 million. She split it evenly. Me and my older brother, Dustin. We'd grown up on that land. We learned to work before we learned to complain on that land. Mom taught us that land was more than property. It was legacy and proof that hard work mattered. I became a doctor. Dustin stayed on the farm to manage operations. We agreed he'd run things and send me quarterly reports. I trusted him completely. He was my brother. My only family after Mom died. I never imagined he'd betray that trust. But as I stood there in Guatemala, staring at $2.3 million I didn't earn, I realized trust was exactly what he had been counting on. I stepped outside the clinic and called the bank immediately. The representative confirmed the deposit. Proceeds from the sale of Willow Creek Farm. Completed 2 weeks ago. My signature was on file. Except, I hadn't signed anything. I asked them to send copies of all the documents. They arrived in my email within minutes. I opened them on my phone, hands trembling and refusing to stay still. There it was. My signature. On the sale agreement. On the transfer documents. On the closing papers. Every signature looked exactly like mine. But I'd been in Guatemala for 14 months. I hadn't signed a single thing. Dustin had forged my name on every document. He had sold our mother's farm. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. And he had the audacity to deposit my half of the money, thinking that would make it acceptable. Like I'd be so grateful for the cash, I wouldn't question where it came from. I called Dustin. It was 11 p.m. his time, but I didn't care. He answered groggily. Camila? What's wrong? My voice was ice. You sold the farm. There was a long silence, then he responded casually. Oh, you got the deposit. Yeah, I was going to call you about that. An amazing deal of $7.8 million was offered by Evergreen Agricultural. I couldn't pass it up. I kept my voice calm. You forged my signature. He went quiet again before responding. Look, I tried to reach you, but you're always in areas with no service. This was time sensitive. I made an executive decision for both of us. You got your share. What's the problem? The problem was everything. Who bought it? I asked. He sounded relieved that I wasn't screaming. Evergreen Agricultural Holdings, a big corporation that is expanding her operations. It's done, Camila. The money's in your account. Just accept it and move on. I spent the next 8 hours researching instead of sleeping. Evergreen Agricultural Holdings was a subsidiary of Quantum Agri Corp., a $520 million company that acquired family farms across the Midwest. They'd purchased 23 farms in our county in the last 4 years. Their business model was simple. Buy productive family farms. Convert them to industrial operations and maximize profit. They had a reputation for squeezing every dollar from the land with no regard for sustainability, and that was everything Mom had stood against. I dug deeper into the sale documents. The transaction closed 16 days ago. Dustin forged my signature. Anyone who looked closely would see the difference. The deposit to my account was legitimate. $2.3 million after taxes and closing costs. Dustin thought sending me the money would absolve him, but he was wrong. Before we see how I made him pay for this betrayal, drop a comment. What's the most shocking thing a family member has ever done to you? I read every and respond to every comment. I could have reported Dustin to the police immediately. The charges would be serious. Forgery, fraud, and theft of property rights. He'd face federal prosecution. But that felt too easy. He'd be arrested, prosecuted, and I would still lose the farm. Mom's legacy would still be gone. I wanted something more. Something that would make him truly understand what he had destroyed. So, I made a different plan. I requested an immediate leave of absence from Medical Relief International. Luckily, it was granted within hours. I booked the first flight home. Then I did something Dustin would never expect. I called Evergreen Agricultural Holdings and asked to speak with their Human Resources Department. A woman answered. I introduced myself as Dr. Camila Torres, an agricultural health specialist with international development experience. I asked if they had any openings in regional management. She asked for my resume. My resume was stronger than most people realized. A medical degree with a focus on rural health. 4 years managing health clinics in agricultural communities across 3 continents. Published research on occupational health in farming operations. Experience coordinating with organizations to improve worker safety and productivity. Certifications in environmental health and sustainable practices. Awards from the World Health Organization for my work integrating health services with farming communities. I wasn't just a doctor. I was someone who understood how to make agricultural operations more efficient by keeping workers healthy and safe. A unique skill set that corporations like Evergreen valued. I sent my resume with a cover letter expressing interest in their regional health and safety director position. The response came in 6 hours. They wanted an interview and I scheduled it for 3 days after my return home. The flight from Guatemala took 11 hours with a layover. I didn't sleep. I planned. I prepared. I decided exactly how far I was willing to go to make this right. Dustin had stolen from me. Forged legal documents. Sold our mother's life's work without permission. He'd betrayed the only family he had left. Part of me wanted to forgive him. To believe he'd made a terrible mistake but didn't mean real harm. But the stronger part of me, the part that had spent 14 months in dangerous conditions saving lives for almost no pay, that part knew better. Dustin had always been selfish. He had always taken the easy path. Mom knew it. That's why she split the farm 50-50 instead of leaving it all to him. She wanted me to have a stake. To have security. Dustin had stolen that security. Now he'd learn what it felt like to have no control at all. I landed on a Wednesday afternoon. I didn't tell Dustin I was back. I drove straight to Evergreen's regional office for my 2 p.m. interview. The director of operations, a woman named Karen, conducted the interview along with the VP of regional management. They asked about my experience. I told them about implementing health and safety protocols in Guatemala that reduced workplace injuries by 47%. About training farm workers in proper equipment use and ergonomic practices. About designing wellness programs that increased productivity by 31% because healthy workers performed better. Karen leaned forward. We've been expanding rapidly but struggling with worker retention and safety compliance. We need someone who understands both health protocols and agricultural operations. Someone who can work with farm managers to implement better practices. I nodded. I grew up on a farm in this county. I understand the culture and the challenges. And I know how to improve outcomes without disrupting operations. They offered me the job before I left the building. The role of Regional Health and Safety Director overseeing all 24 farms Evergreen owned in the county and a salary of $165,000 annually plus performance bonuses. I would work with each farm manager to implement safety protocols, health programs, and operational improvements. My first assignment would be their newest acquisition, Willow Creek Farm, the one my brother sold. I accepted immediately and the start date was the following Monday. 5 days away. That gave me time to handle Dustin. I drove to Willow Creek late that afternoon. The farm looked exactly as I remembered. Rolling fields. The old equipment barn. The farmhouse where we grew up. Dustin's truck was parked by the main building. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, gathering myself. Then I walked inside. He was at Mom's old desk, reviewing something on the computer. He looked up and went completely white. Camila, what are you doing here? I sat down across from him. We need to talk about what you did. Dustin tried to deflect, saying, Look, I know you're upset, but the sale was the right call. The farm was barely breaking even. We both got paid. I don't see why. I didn't let him finish. The farm was not barely breaking even. I've seen the accounts, Dustin. Last year, revenue was $1.9 million. Profit margins were 24%. And you were taking a salary of $125,000 a year, all while telling me we were struggling. His face turned red. I was managing everything by myself. I earned that salary. Then, I pulled out my phone and showed him the forged signatures. You forged my name on legal documents. That is a federal crime, punishable by 5 to 7 years in prison. Did that ever cross your mind? Before you stole my inheritance. He jumped up, knocking his chair over. I didn't steal anything. You got paid $2.3 million. What more could you possibly want? I kept my voice steady. I want you to understand what you really took. This wasn't just land and buildings. It was Mom's legacy. And you sold it off for your own convenience. Dustin's anger faded, replaced by what looked like fear. He asked, "What are you going to do? Are you going to report me?" I stood up slowly. "I should report you. But I have a better idea." He looked confused. "What are you talking about?" I started walking toward the door. "You'll find out on Monday. I know Evergreen kept you on as farm manager for a $78,000 salary, isn't it?" He gave a suspicious nod. "Yeah. So what?" I smiled, a smile that held no kindness. "So, I'll see you Monday morning. Be on time." I left him there, panicked and confused. I offered no explanation. Let him spend the whole weekend wondering what I meant. Let him stew in the anxiety he deserved. Come Monday morning, everything would be clear. And Dustin would finally understand that actions have consequences. Sometimes, those consequences come from the person you betrayed. Sometimes karma has a face. And in this case, that face belongs to his younger sister. The one he never believed would fight back. Monday morning I arrived at Evergreen's regional headquarters at 7 a.m. sharp. Karen gave me a tour of the facilities and introduced me to the regional team. Then she handed me a folder. "These are the 24 farms in your region. Willow Creek is our newest acquisition. We're having some issues with the current manager, Dustin Torres. He's been defensive about implementing our standard protocols. Resistant to changes. We need you to bring him in line or recommend termination." I opened the folder. Dustin's employment contract was inside. He'd been hired as farm manager at $78,000 annually. A significant pay cut from the $125,000 he'd been paying himself. The contract included a 90-day probationary period. I could recommend his termination at any time during those 90 days. I looked at Karen. "I'll handle Dustin Torres personally. I know exactly how to work with resistant managers." She looked relieved. "Perfect. You're scheduled to meet with him this afternoon at 2 o'clock. At exactly 1:45 p.m., I drove to Willow Creek. Inside the main office, Dustin was waiting and pacing nervously. He clearly had no idea who his new supervisor was. Evergreen had kept him in the dark. He thought he was meeting some corporate health and safety inspector, there to lecture him about boring protocols. I parked in Mom's old spot, the one she'd used every day for 35 years. Then, I walked through the door with my briefcase and tablet. Dustin turned around. His eyes met mine. Within 5 seconds, his face told the whole story. Confusion, then recognition, then disbelief, and finally, pure horror. He stumbled backward, hitting the desk behind him. "No," he choked out. "This can't be happening." I extended my hand with perfect professionalism. "Dustin, I am Dr. Camila Torres, your new Regional Health and Safety Director. We have compliance issues to discuss." "You're my boss," he said, his voice tight and strained. I settled into Mom's chair, right behind her old desk. "Why do you look so surprised? Now, sit down. We have a great deal to cover. If you've ever wanted to watch someone face the consequences of their own betrayal, drop a comment and share this story. Sometimes, justice arrives wearing a very professional smile." Dustin dropped into the chair across from me like his legs had given out. "This is insane. You can't be my supervisor. This is our farm." I corrected him calmly. "It's not our farm anymore. You sold it. Remember? Now it's Evergreen's property. I'm their regional director. You're a farm manager on probation. He tried to recover. I'll quit. Right now. I pulled out his employment contract. You signed a 2-year non-compete clause. If you quit, you can't work in agriculture within 150 miles of here for 24 months. You have no other skills. No other career options. Where exactly will you go? His face went from red to pale. Why are you doing this? I leaned forward. Because you need to understand that stealing from people has consequences. You forged my signature. You sold our mother's farm without my consent. You took something that wasn't yours to take. Now you'll work under my supervision, and maybe you'll learn what integrity actually means. I laid out his new reality. Your salary is $78,000. Your probationary review is in 90 days. You'll implement every health and safety protocol I require. You'll submit weekly reports on worker conditions, equipment maintenance, and operational compliance. You'll attend mandatory training on proper management practices. And every single day, you'll remember that this farm should have been ours together, but you chose theft over family. Dustin's voice shook. I can't work under you. This is humiliating. I stood up. You should have thought about that before you forged my signature. Your first assignment is due Friday. I need a complete audit of all farm equipment, worker safety training records, and incident reports for the past year. Don't be late. I walked out. Behind me, I heard him say something that might have been an apology. I didn't stop. Apologies without change are just manipulation. Dustin would learn to change. Or he'd learn to find another career. Over the next month, I implemented changes across all 24 farms in my region. But I focused extra attention on Willow Creek. I brought in safety inspectors and found dozens of violations. Equipment that hadn't been maintained properly. Workers without proper training. No emergency protocols. Dustin had been cutting corners for years, risking people's lives to save money. I fixed everything. New equipment. Proper training programs. Safety protocols that met or exceeded industry standards. The workers were grateful. They'd been complaining about conditions for years, but Dustin ignored them. Now they had someone who listened. Someone who cared about their well-being. Dustin worked alongside them for the first time in years. I made sure of it. No more sitting in the office delegating while others took the risks. He learned every safety protocol personally. He understood what it meant to work in dangerous conditions without proper protection. He finally saw what he'd been doing to people. When my first quarter ended, I stood before the regional board with my results. Across all 24 farms, worker injuries had plummeted by 52%. Productivity rose by 19%, because when workers are safe and healthy, they perform better. With fewer claims, insurance costs fell dramatically. And Willow Creek? The transformation was stunning. 3 months with 0 injuries. Productivity jumped 27%. Worker satisfaction hit record highs. My boss, Karen, took these numbers to corporate. They were deeply impressed. I even got a call from the CEO. Dr. Torres, he told me, your work is exceptional. You've achieved what we thought was impossible. Let's talk about a bigger role for you. 1 week later, they made me Vice President of Regional Operations and Safety. The salary? $215,000 a year. My new mandate? To oversee all operations and safety for every farm in the region. I would now be the direct supervisor of every single farm manager. Which, of course, included Dustin. Dustin, who had just barely completed his 90-day probation. His entire career now rested in my hands. I scheduled Dustin's 90-day review for a Thursday afternoon. He came to my office carrying a folder of documentation. He looked different than he had 3 months ago. Thinner. More tired. But also more focused. He'd been working harder than I'd ever seen him work. Every report was submitted on time. He implemented every change without complaint, and attended every training. The farm's performance under the new protocols was excellent. I reviewed his file for several long minutes while he waited in silence. Finally, I looked up. Your performance has been acceptable. Relief flooded his face. So, I passed my probation? I leaned back in my chair. Yes. On one condition. His relief instantly turned to wariness. What condition? I pushed a single document across the desk. You take a voluntary salary reduction to $65,000. The difference will go into a new foundation, established in Mom's name. It will fund agricultural education for kids in this county who can't afford college. Dustin looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. Done, he said. And he signed it without hesitation. But after signing, Dustin didn't leave. He sat there, looking down at his hands. Can I say something? He asked. I nodded. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I am truly sorry. Not because you caught me. Not because I got in trouble. But because I finally understand what I did. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. These past 3 months working under you. Seeing how you treat people, how you genuinely care about their safety and their well-being. That's what Mom taught us. That's who she was. And I forgot all of it. I turned this place into something she would have hated. His voice broke. I didn't just steal from you, Camila. I betrayed everything she stood for. Everything she built. And I am so sorry. I studied him. I searched his face for any sign of manipulation, for a performance. But all I saw was genuine, raw remorse. Sorry doesn't undo what you did, I said quietly. He nodded, accepting it. I know. But I'm trying. I'm trying to become someone who might be worthy of forgiveness someday. Even if it takes years. Even if you never give it to me. I'm trying. I felt myself soften, just slightly. I see that, I said. Keep trying. 6 months after I started at Evergreen, the foundation was established. The Torres Agricultural Education Fund. Funded by Dustin's salary reduction, my donations, and contributions from Evergreen matched by corporate. We awarded our first 5 scholarships to local students studying agriculture. One of them was the daughter of a worker from Willow Creek. At the award ceremony, I gave a speech about Mom. About how she believed education and opportunity could change lives. How she built a farm from nothing because someone gave her a chance. How we were honoring her by giving others that same chance. Dustin sat in the back row. He wasn't on the program. Wasn't recognized. But he was there. And when I talked about Mom, I saw him crying. After the ceremony, he approached me. Thank you for doing this. For making something good come from my mistake. I looked at him. I didn't do this for you. I did it for Mom. And for those kids. But you're helping. That matters. A year after returning from Guatemala, my life looked completely different. I was VP of Regional Operations for a major agricultural company. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined. I'd established a foundation honoring Mom's memory. And I'd somehow ended up working alongside my brother who'd betrayed me. Our relationship was complicated. We were professional at work. Polite but distant outside of it. We had family dinners occasionally. Talked about safe topics. Avoided discussing the past. Maybe someday we'd be close again. Maybe not. But we were both honoring Mom's legacy in our own ways. Dustin had changed. Really changed. He worked harder. Treated people better. Took responsibility instead of making excuses. The farm workers respected him now instead of resenting him. And he'd paid back every dollar of the salary reduction without complaint. The foundation had helped 12 students in its first year. That was Mom's real legacy. Not the land. The impact. The lives changed. The opportunities created. One evening, I drove to Willow Creek after work. I wanted to walk the fields like Mom used to do every sunset. The farm looked better than it ever had. Healthy crops. Well-maintained equipment. Safe working conditions. Everything Mom would have wanted. Dustin saw me from the barn and walked over. We stood together watching the sun go down over land that was no longer ours but still felt like home. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Regret what? He gestured at the fields. Letting the sale stand. You could have avoided it. Pressed charges. Got the farm back. I thought about that. No. I don't regret it. The sale was wrong. What you did was wrong. But fighting to undo it would have destroyed the farm in legal battles. This way the land is productive. Workers are safe. Mom's legacy lives through the foundation. It worked out. He nodded. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But thank you for not destroying me. For giving me a chance to be better. I looked at him. Mom always said land doesn't make you who you are. Your choices do. You made terrible choices. But you're making better ones now. That's what matters. 2 years after the sale, our foundation had helped 31 students. Willow Creek had become the most productive and safest farm in Evergreen's entire network. I'd been promoted again, now serving as Executive Vice President of Operations for 6 states. Dustin remained the farm manager. He had turned down offers from other companies to stay right here. This is where Mom's legacy lives, he told me. I need to honor that. We had rebuilt our relationship. Slowly. Brick by brick. We weren't as close as we'd been before the betrayal. Maybe we never would be. But we were family again. Partners in honoring our mother's memory. And we had both learned something profound. Sometimes, the worst betrayals lead to the most important growth. Dustin learned integrity the hard way. I learned that revenge doesn't have to mean destruction. Sometimes the best revenge is transformation. Taking what is broken and building something better from the pieces. That's what Mom would have wanted. Not vengeance. Not bitterness. But growth. Change. Impact. A legacy that truly matters. 5 years after that day in the Guatemalan clinic, the day I discovered the betrayal, I stood in the same spot at Willow Creek where Mom used to watch the sunset. The foundation had now helped 89 students. Dustin and I had even co-authored a professional paper on integrating health and safety into farm operations. We had both found purpose in work that honored her. And the farm that was stolen from me had become something far more valuable than property. It became a living lesson. About forgiveness. About consequences. About transformation. About how the worst moments of our lives can become the very foundation for our greatest growth. Mom used to say that land was legacy. But she was wrong. Land is just dirt, and crops and property. Legacy is what you build from the choices you make when everything goes wrong. Dustin made terrible choices, and he learned from them. I made hard choices and I grew from them. Together, we turned a deep betrayal into lasting impact. And that is a legacy worth more than any farm. If this story reminded you that transformation is possible, even after a deep betrayal, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Have you ever stood at the crossroads between revenge and redemption? Your voice matters. Comment below and subscribe for more stories about turning pain into purpose.